Dubbed as black gold, oil is one of the most used natural resources today. It is still widely used for the economic development of all countries and for improving the quality of life of their population. But there is just one small problem. It is finite. Which means that eventually the oil available on the planet will run out, and that's where things become quite complicated. Oil can currently be considered as the raw material of an economy, and the lack of it can generate disastrous consequences. Consequences that are enough to lead nations to wage political battles that sometimes can escalate into intense wars. All because of this single resource. But the quest for oil has even darker reasons than one may think at first. And in today's video, you will learn about the impact of oil and gas on geopolitics and the world economy. But before that, please leave your like if you enjoyed this topic and subscribe to the channel if you're not already to not miss any updates here on Visionary Businesses. Why is oil important? Since the intensive extraction of oil began in the 19th century, it has been widely used mainly in industry and transportation. Among the main byproducts of oil are gasoline, diesel, and natural gas, which are primarily used as sources of energy. However, oil is also used for the manufacture of plastic, synthetic rubber, paints, dyes, adhesives, solvents, detergents, explosives, and even asphalt. At the beginning, kerosene was used to light the lamps of the cities, transforming the nightlife and allowing activities to be carried out at night. With the Industrial Revolution, its applications were increasingly expanded, especially in the use as a source of electrical energy by countries such as the United States, European, and Asian countries. Currently, it is the fuel that allows the transport of people and virtually all products we use in our daily lives. Oil is responsible for more than 80% of the global energy matrix, which means that of all the energy used in the world, most of it is derived from oil. This is basically the set of factors that made oil so important in the current world, but on the other hand, a high dependence on this natural resource was created, which as previously mentioned is not infinite. The problem with oil. Although oil is considered as the basis of many industrialized economies, it is not 100% perfect because there are certain problems that surround this natural resource. The first and best known problem is the fact that it is a fossil fuel, meaning that once burned, it cannot be reused. Another problem is precisely in the burning of oil, which releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which are mainly responsible for global warming, triggering several other ecological issues. But the real problem with oil is still another, and it is precisely the impact it causes on global geopolitics and the economy. You see, oil is considered as a strategic resource and is still highly valued in the global market, which makes it have a great impact. Large oil producers like Saudi Arabia and Russia use it as a position of power, as they can control the supply of the product, directly influencing oil prices and availability for the global market. And as we already know that oil is needed in all countries, especially to keep the economy running, because without oil, the vast majority of products and services cannot be made available to the population. This means that producers have control over entire economies through oil. International politics can also be highly influenced by issues such as embargoes and sanctions, which can be imposed by oil-producing countries on all others for various reasons. A major oil producer can simply threaten to cut off the supply to a country if its demands are not met, and since the consequences for a country without oil are unimaginable, they will be met even if unwillingly. This creates immense instability in countries that rely heavily on oil and need their demand to be supplied by the major producers. The impact of oil. A recent example of the impact of oil on geopolitics and the global economy is the case of sanctions by much of the world against Russia in 2022. As Russia is the second largest oil producer in the world according to OPEC, Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, and all of Europe cut trade relations with the country, the supply of natural gas, which accounted for 40% of Europe's electricity, was interrupted. This created panic, as the interruption was close to the European winter, and the lack of natural gas that fuels heating systems threatened some countries with severe cold. The situation was eventually resolved by using excess natural gas from neighboring countries, but at a high cost to the European population, as the increase was over 35%, virtually overnight. The Russian gas cut also had a huge impact on the economy of some countries, where inflation due to the pandemic was already causing a recession, and the gas increase made the situation unfeasible for some companies, which ended up closing their doors. This generated unemployment that further slows down a country's economy, creating a chain reaction that can ruin an entire population, all starting with the simple lack of oil. This is just one example of the great impact of oil on geopolitics, international relations, and global political stability, and how this situation can make a country's economy difficult. At best, because at worst, an entire country can simply break due to the lack of oil. The quest for oil. Another impact of oil is the incessant desire of all countries in the world to obtain more and more reserves of the resource to ensure political stability and the profits that come with them. This causes conflicts to be generated solely because of oil. Throughout history, there have been several examples such as the conflict in Syria, which began in 2011 due to a series of complex factors, including ethnic, religious, and political issues. However, control of oil and gas reserves in the region has been a key factor in the conflict. Another example was the Gulf War, which occurred between 1990 and 1991 and was a conflict between Iraq and a coalition led by the United States. The dispute originated from Iraq's desire to control Kuwait's oil reserves. Some other examples of wars that have occurred simply due to the thirst for expanding the amount of oil include the conflict in Libya, the conflict in Sudan, and the conflict in Nigeria. We can also mention practically all conflicts in the Middle East, as this region is one of the world's main oil producers and has been the site of many conflicts and wars over the years. The conflicts in Yemen, for example, are related to the dispute over the control of oil transport routes. This generates high political instability among several countries that end up choosing to support one side and can trigger increasingly complex conflicts for a natural resource that will inevitably run out. The solution. Although oil is the basis of the entire current economy, dependence on this energy source has already been proven to be unfeasible, and several countries are seeking alternatives to balance the situation. The big bet is on renewable energy sources such as hydroelectric power plants, nuclear power plants, photovoltaic energy production, and the use of biofuels such as ethanol. In this way, the dependence on oil can be reduced and the consequences of its shortage can be mitigated. As an example, we can mention Brazil, where practically all of its electrical energy comes from hydroelectric plants, and a large part of its vehicles are powered by ethanol. But even so, there is still no independence from oil, as it is widely used by aerial vehicles and most of the buses and trucks in circulation in the country. The light at the end of the tunnel is coming with the popularization and lowering of the cost of electric cars, but since much of the world still uses thermal power, which requires oil derivatives to function, the dependence will still continue for some time. The only real alternative is investment in alternative sources of electricity generation, such as those mentioned earlier. This would be the only way to reduce the impact of oil and gas on geopolitics and the global economy. We know that oil is important and is part of our lives directly or indirectly, as we may not use any vehicle that requires gasoline, for example, but the food we consume daily reaches us through a truck, which is powered by diesel, which in turn is a derivative of oil. We cannot deny that we need oil, but we need to identify the various problems that come with it. But what about you? Did you already know about the impact of oil on geopolitics and the global economy? Do you have any ideas on how we can end this dependence on oil that we currently live with? Leave your suggestions in the comments and also leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are not already subscribed and activate the notification bell to not miss any updates here on Visionary Businesses. And if you didn't realize that oil had such a huge impact on the entire planet, you'll certainly be shocked by the impact that China has on global trade. The card is appearing on your screen, and I recommend that you watch it now.